Hello and welcome back to my channel. I think I might have resolved the audio issues going on with my microphone, so we'll have to see. I'm playing a game against Boogeyman here, and he advertised in the comments of the game, anything goes. So I love those types of games where I'm playing against an opponent who's bringing in as competitive a mindset, at the very least, as I'm bringing to the game. As you'll see by the title, I am playing... Where is she? There she is. Sidisi Brood Tyrant. My opponent, Boogeyman, is playing Teferi Temporal Archmage. So, a little bit about Teferi before we jump into the gameplay. Teferi is one of the better mono-blue commanders. I think he's probably the best mono-blue, Arkham decks and notwithstanding, because I consider Arkham blue-brown, let's be honest. But Teferi, as far as mono-blue goes, is probably the most competitive in a multiplayer setting. Now, that said, when you're playing 1v1, you generally want to swap Teferi into the 99 for Jace of Vryn's Prodigy in the main deck, mostly because Jace comes down faster and can accrue his value without much pressure on him when you're only playing against a single opponent. Teferi, even in the stacks build, doesn't do as much as you want him to do as early, because you're effectively just trying to survive to resolve Teferi and then try to combo off. And as you'll see, Boogeyman is playing a combo variant of the deck, in my opinion. Granted, there are decks builds that work with Teferi that do not work with Jace as well, such as the Stasis build, which Mono Blue can tutor for. You need, assuming you have, say, Merchant Scroll in hand, you Merchant Scroll to get your Mystical Tutor. You can get Muddle the Mixture, and then muddle the mixture into Stasis, and then Teferi will win you the game with Stasis in play if you're landed against a tapped out opponent. So I see my opening hand. I have either turn 1 Dryad Arbor or turn 1 Elves. I decide that Teferi most cares about deploying islands as quickly as possible, so the chance of Strip Mine waste on turn 1 is very low, especially if I lead Mana Dork. So I'm planning to lead the Elves of Deep Shadow, even though I have 2 black sources. It might have been correct to play the Dryad Arbor prior, but by playing Elves of Deep Shadow, it gives me more options next turn, because I'll have potentially triple black online, or green and then black online as well, instead of only a single black source. Alright, so I win the dice roll. I go over Green Tomb into the Elves of Deep Shadow, like I said. This also leaves me Green Sun Zenith in hand for later in the game, if I want to get something like a Reclamation Sage. And while the ability to get Dryad Arbor on turn 1 is very good, Green Sun Zenith has added utility, which Elves of Deep Shadow does not. Alright, my opponent, Island Go. Alright, and I pick up Narcomoeba, probably one of the worst draws in the deck. That's okay. So I decide I'm going to get Zenith this turn because I want to develop as much as possible, and I play this untapped because I'm planning to play around Daze at this point. So I Green Sun Zenith. By doing it now, I'm playing around Spell Pierce because he only has a single blue. There's very little that he can cast to interact with me at this point. So I'm going to get the Dryad Arbor. Now that I've played around Spell Pierce on the only Spell Pierceable target, I'm going to resolve this Deathrite Shaman. There's not currently lands in the graveyard, but Deathrite Shaman can start eating cards out of my opponent's yard to make their twists or their recovery effects, Time Spiral, Time Twister, less good in the long run, because I'm getting valuable cards out of their list. Also notably, Deathrite Shaman can exile High Tide, which is the most important piece in the Teferi / Jace builds, typically, if they're playing a combo variant of it. My opponent goes with Island and pushes the turn back, so blue open. I think about this turn for a sec and decide that I'm going to go with my Yavimaya Elder instead of Sidisi. I really don't feel like walking Sidisi into potential mana drain. So I decide that I'd rather have the Yavi Elder countered, because Sidisi plus mana drain means he has Teferi even if he's got no other lands in hand. And Teferi can start plussing, gaining him value, and I have to give up using these for mana to attack Teferi. I'd rather play Yavi Elder, have it get countered, if he's going to have a counterspell. It also gives me the ability to leave up black mana for Deathrite Shaman to exile whatever he counters, and I can still hit him for 2 life this turn. Yavi Elder, and he decides to remand it, and I'm honestly okay with that. So I'm going to pass the turn back. My opponent goes Island Pass, and I'm going to eat that remand out of the yard to drop him down to 38. Pick up Nissa, and decide Nissa is going to be the card that I play here. If this resolves against mono blue, this will eventually turn into Sage Animist, and he doesn't really have good answers in the deck for that. Mono blue struggles with kill spells in general, short of bounce, so this is sort of one of those cards that I'm playing this specifically to eat a counterspell out of his hand. My opponent goes with a Frantic Search, that's fine. Pitches Enter the Infinite and Paradox Engine, so definitely combo build. As soon as I see these two cards, I know he's on combo. Enter the Infinite also says that he's on Lab Maniac as his primary win condition to me. And Counterspell. Alright, that's fine. So this Frantic Search is actually card disadvantage because you're drawing 2, discarding 2, but you spent 1 card to do it. So if you start at your hand of 6 when you cast before you cast Frantic Search, you end up at a hand of 5. And then you spend Counterspell. So I played 1 spell and got 2 cards out of his hand. These 2 were replaced because of Frantic Search, but I removed 2 cards from his hand effectively with that play, because he played the Frantic Search through it. I'm going to get him with the Deathrite because I don't have black mana open or green mana open, so I might as well hit for 1 here. My opponent just land pass, and if we're going to play this game, I'm not going to deploy something that's actually a real threat that I need to have resolve for the first time. I'm going to push Yavimaya Elder out, and I tap like this because I specifically want to have blue, black, black, green, and black open, because this gives me Cyclonic Rift and Deathrite Shaman mana if I need to. There's no thought of deploying Narcomoeba here. I'm essentially treating it as discard fodder for any potential effect that I may want to discard for. My opponent 4 mana Factor Fiction. I think about this for a sec, decided I don't want to respond. Alright, here's the split, and I may be incorrect in this. So I've seen Enter the Infinite. I'm terrified of Show and Tell happening. Splitting the lands probably would have been correct. I don't have anything good to Show and Tell in, but I do have Cyclonic Rift. The issue is if he Show and Tells in something that is like Omniscience, and then he has free counterspells, Cyclonic Rift isn't going to do what I need it to do. So I decided to give him 4-1 here, and I definitely should have did Chain Veil and 2 Islands and Island Show and Tell. That way it puts a land in the graveyard for Deathrite Shaman, no matter what. But I give him a 4-1, and he takes the 4, which is correct. Chain Veil's very good with his commander. It essentially means Teferi can tick down to add 1 blue mana to your mana pool if you have a rock that taps for 3. And if you have a rock that taps for 4, he produces 2 blue mana per -1. So it's a very good card in the Teferi build. It has Soul Ring into Teferi, and then untap some stuff and ship the turn back, so most likely sitting on counter magic. I decided this turn I'm going to start by exiling Frantic Search, which is by far the scariest card in the graveyard, and I'm going to talk about that for a moment. So Enter the Infinite is an obscenely powerful magic card, but it costs 12 mana. Counterspell, he's going to have more of them. Show and Tell is very good, but it needs to combo with something in his hand. Factor Fiction is a huge draw spell. Frantic Search untaps lands, though, and that's the biggest issue I have with it. It is a free spell that draws him into cards. Factor Fiction, Show and Tell, Counterspell, Enter the Infinite all cost mana. Frantic Search effectively does not, and if he has a way to get back Frantic Search under a high tide, I'm in a world of hurt. So I decided to deal with the Frantic Search first. Show and Tell is most likely going to be my second target because it's the best at digging. And this turn I also decided to crack the Yavimaya Elder. Sorry, I'm not Cyclonic Rift yet. Even though I have the ability to bounce Teferi, I might be able to attack it down. I make a misplay on my coming turn though. So I get those and I pick up a Duress, which is fantastic. And pick up Rex Stage. So I decide that I'm going to Duress pre-combat, and I sort of get got here. He has Cryptic tap my team and counter Duress. Alright, well, I'm going to eat the Factor Fiction off the Elves of Deep Shadow that's going to be tapped anyway, and I'm going to float 2 green mana. Now, I'm going to Rex Sage the Soul Ring. Now I think about this for a second. I would love to use Reclamation Sage's ability. I know he has Chain Veil in hand. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana off Teferi. Assuming he's going to at least use one of the untapped to untap Chain Veil. That means 8 mana off Teferi. that gives him 1, 2, 3, 4 to deploy Chain Veil. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 to deploy Chain Veil. And then minus 1 Teferi to untap those 4 lands, activate Chain Veil, and start going off. So I decide that I'm going to slow him down for a turn. I'm not really going to get a big Cyclonic Rift to this game, I'm feeling, so I decide the tempo play of removing Teferi from the board just for 1 turn might be enough for me. So I decide to go with that line. My opponent, for their credit, has 4 mana, Chain Veil, and ships back. Takes 2 damage off the Veil. It's irrelevant in this game. Play the island that I tutored up with the Yavimaya a while back, and play Mystic Remore, which is sort of a must-counter spell when you're playing the non-creature deck, because he can't let me have this much value over the course of the game. He doesn't know that there's not actually a force in this list. The blue count isn't high enough, in my opinion, so I ended up cutting the force, but it's just the fact that I could draw into Force of Will because he would give me cards off the Remore, he can't allow. So now that he's tapped out, now's the turn to deploy Sidisi and put pressure on board. And I keep up green-black mana for Deathrite Shaman activations if I need to. I hit a Temporal Archmage, which would have been very nice to get in play, but I'm not worried about it. I'm going to crash with everything but Deathrite, because Deathrite actually does more damage by not attacking here. And it's also instant speed. So my opponent goes Basalt Monolith, which is one of the best cards they could have had here, into Teferi. And you're going to see a bunch of interactions here. So let me talk through it. So Teferi -1 this turn, tap Monolith, Island, Island, Island. Okay. So he's going to float mana, activate Chain Veil. So Teferi has another activation. Now here's what Teferi's doing. He's untapping Chain Veil and 4 mana from these cards here, these 3, and 1 island. So every time, and then he can reactivate Chain Veil with this 4 mana. So every time he -1s Teferi, he gets a blue mana in his mana pool, because this is what he's producing over here. So he's got 3 left, so this is going to be 1, and then 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he'll have 7 blue this turn if he decides to cash in Teferi entirely. That said, he'll have Basalt Monolith and Island on the last iteration of it. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 mana, 8 of which is blue, if he needs to use these for something else. So we're going to jump through this rather quickly. Twist away. So I eat... What did I eat there? I ate the Enter the Infinite, just because it's the most terrifying card that he could redraw with the amount of mana that he could produce. And he twisted me into this absolutely insanely good hand. So I have 3 pieces of hand disruption, which is exactly what I need here. And naturally I'll lead Duress, follow Mesmeric Fiend, try to resolve Hypnotist, because I assume the first 2 will be countered, or they'll take the counterspells out of his hand. So, Preordain, activate Chain Veil, and he's going to go through this iteration a few more times here. Sacrifice Teferi, replay Teferi, activate Chain Veil, and he ships Teferi at 3. Yes. So I pick up the Narcomoeba again. Just haunts this card haunts me. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to lead Duress, saying counter this or lose something. He has the negate again. So maybe negate would have been a good exile also. He would have drawn Enter the Infinite instead, I guess, there. But I think exiling Enter's the best call there. So I'm going to get into combat first and kill Teferi. Try to force him to use a little bit more mana as my only goal here. So I'm going to send everything at Teferi and keep all of my mana dorks open. I actually get another zombie here by milling the Sidisi and the Mystic Remore that I lost earlier. And Teferi goes down, which is fine. I'm going to tap some more mana, and so I'm trying to hide the fact that I have more black mana, just a little bit. I do also have Deathrite Shaman eating the forest if I need it, but I don't think I'll need that mana. Mesmeric Fiend. Is that going to resolve? Mana drain the Mesmeric Fiend, and that's what I wanted to see. That type of spell. Now he's out of blue mana, so he needs exactly Force of Will to be able to prevent Sadistic Hypnotist from resolving. Force of Will or Pact of Negation to prevent Sadistic Hypnotist from resolving. And it does resolve, and goodbye to Teferi's hand. So see him some lands, back to basics, which he should have played on his turn. in my opinion. I think he had the mana, too. Like, I don't know. Cutting me off 2 mana seems good. The fact he did know that I had 3 basics and dorks, so maybe back to basics was wrong, but it shuts off 2 of my mana. Stasis, which also would have been very good. Alright, and my opponent is at an empty hand, so he had Island, Counterspell, back to basics, Stasis. So, very good hand, but now he's Hellbent. You can have mana drain mana, that is fine. I know you only have 1 play. He plays an Island off the top of his deck. Teferi, and activates Teferi. Teferi's going to go up, and he gets Turnabout off of the Teferi activation, untapping his artifacts, activates Chain Veil, keeps chaining up, chaining, using Chain Veil and making Teferi go down to produce 4 mana at the end of it. Activates Chain Veil 1 more time, 4 mana, and then takes Teferi up, hoping to get something with this 4 mana. Power Artifact on Basalt Monolith. And so he is at infinite mana here, but he has nothing to do with it. So the interaction between Power Artifact is it reduces Grim Monolith's secondary ability, untap Basalt, untap Basalt Monolith for 3 mana. It reduces it to only cost 1 mana, but it taps for 3 mana, so it produces 2 colorless mana per cycle. He has the ability to untap it for a single blue, but he has no cards in hand, and he can't untap the Chain Veil. So if he had the ability to untap the Chain Veil, he would have most likely infinite Teferi activations. And the way that works is he has infinite mana. So Teferi untaps Chain Veil, Island. So he's producing 2 blue every time Teferi goes down, or 3 blue every time Teferi goes down. And then he can infinitely recast Teferi, essentially. So he produces infinite mana, I believe, and then he's got to go up with Teferi eventually. I think every time he replays Teferi, he can go up and then down, so he digs through his entire deck as well. But he's a little bit short, and that's all I needed. I'm a little bit punished here by pitching the Reclamation... I'm potentially extremely punished by pitching the Reclamation Sage to the Hypnotist because of this interaction here. I gotta hope that this Deep Analysis gets me somewhere. So he's gonna untap the Basalt just because he doesn't want to lose the floating mana anyway, which I agree with. Hypnotist is now dead on board. I realize Deathrite's not going to do anything for me. I'm not going to activate him. Pick up a forest. Alright, so Deep Analysis into something, right? What am I going to get? Animate Dead. Exactly what I need here. And this turn, my line that I'm planning to take is Animate Dead, targeting Reclamation Sage. Reclamation Sage, the Basalt Monolith, killing that. And that would be 1/2 mana. Or 1/2, and then I have 1/2, 3, or 1/2. Let's see, 1/2 mana. There we go. Llanowar and Swamp. Then I can play the forest and use Forest, Watergrave, Elves of Deep Shadow to Phyrexian Metamorph, paying 2 life, and copy the Reclamation Sage, killing the Chain Veil. Attack Teferi with Sadistic Hypnotist. Send Sidisi at my opponent. And then I still have Deathrite Shaman activation up off the Overgrown Tomb, or go for the Throat Open if I need to. And here I'll show you what happens. I cast Animate Dead, target Reclamation Sage, and Boogeyman concedes. And I think it's correct there. I'm going to have you empty boarded. Teferi costs 12, so there's no chance Teferi is coming down on his following turn. And any cards that he leaves stranded in his hand will be eaten by the Sadistic Hypnotist. So the draw-go game that Blue wants to play can no longer be played, and he rightly packs it in. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm trying out this new OBS software, so let me know if the audio is much better for you. And I'm trying to figure out if the resolution's right. I'll be seeing if I got a good resolution off of this video when I upload it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video to anyone you think might enjoy. And check the comments down below, or the description down below, for links to the my deck list, as well as check the description for the link to my deck list page that will include all of the deck lists that I play on this channel that I have typed up at this point. Sorry about that. Alright, have a good one. See you guys in the next one.